Hi, Matt. This is Winston. Um, I wanted to make a response to your constant um, talk about the human download. You keep saying over and over again in all your videos that nobody's in on a conspiracy, or very few people are in on it, and that most people are just on some type of download frequency, like they're downloading updates from the Matrix, kind of like when your smartphone downloads updates from the manufacturer when it updates your phone or the apps or something, and that's how most people are. I do agree with that to some extent. There is truth in that, of course, because it does seem like most people are on automatic pilot and they're just going with the crowd and just following the trend. And, and once the trend started, it spreads like wildfire. It's almost like an instinct to just conform to a hive mind, kind of like in the Borg collective on Star Trek. And humans do seem hardwired in their DNA to conform and to follow authority. And that's true, in the animal kingdom and in the insect kingdom too, because if you look at ants and bees, they all conform and serve the role that they are assigned by the hive or by the queen or whatever. And notice how ants and bees don't use language. They don't talk to each other with language. So how do they know what to do or what their role is? Well, obviously, it's just it's hardwired in their DNA, or perhaps insects are telepathic. They can sort of read and know by instinct what is expected of them and what their assigned role in the beehive is, or in the ant colony. So they seem to have an instinct for knowing what their role is, and humans could be just like that. I mean, it's just like, supposedly your body contains 40 trillion cells, and how do the 40 trillion cells know what to do? How do they know what function to do? Are they told that, or it's just hardwired in the DNA of all your cells so that they know what to do? They know their assigned role, So you do see that in nature, that everything seems to be on a download frequency, or it's just hard-coded in the DNA for them to know what to do. And then it could be like that with humans too. The humans are hardwired to go with whatever the tribe says or the hive mind, and to obey authority. Even when authority is wrong or bad, they still obey authority because it's hardwired in the human DNA to do so. So there is a lot of truth to the download frequency theory, Matt, and I do agree with it to some extent. And it does make sense, and it fits what you see in nature. But there is one problem with what you say, Matt, and that's that a lot of these major conspiracies you're talking about, they cannot work with just a human download. There would have to be a lot of people in on it. Okay, to give you an example, you say the moon landing was a hoax. And I agree that it probably was, because there's a lot of evidence to support that, and we don't have to go over that evidence because there's a lot of documentaries and videos about that. But the thing is, Matt, I mean, if the moon landing was a hoax, then the 17 astronauts involved in it are not just on the download frequency. They have to know that they were in a hoax, because they have to be actors, and they have to know that it didn't happen, and that the thing was a hoax, and that they're just pretending to have walked on the moon, right? The 17 Apollo astronauts that allegedly walked on the moon. Okay, so they have to be in on it, okay, unless maybe, like you said, they're NPCs and they just do whatever the Matrix says, and they have no soul or consciousness or self-awareness. I guess that's possible, that I guess you could put that on the table, but, I can't, there's no way we can prove or disprove that. How do you prove if somebody has a soul or doesn't, Because even a computer animated character can show emotion and pretend to have emotions if they're programmed to. So there's no way to definitively know if somebody has a soul or is self-aware or not. And even people who have a soul, they may not necessarily have a divine spark or a divine soul that makes them, a conscious being. Most people could be instinct driven like animals. Okay, so, there's no way to prove or disprove that. Or maybe the 17 astronauts were put in some type of device where they were conditioned by some type of mind control machine to believe that they walked on the moon when they didn't. I don't know. But the thing is, in a conspiracy like that, like if the moon landing was a hoax, you can't do it with just 10 or 15 people at the top of the pyramid. You would have to have several hundred people that were in on it that know that it was a hoax and are not just on the download frequency. In other words, they would have to know that they were involved in a hoax and a conspiracy to deceive everyone, okay? Because you can't pull off a huge conspiracy like that all over the world, involving a moon landing hoax with 10 people. You would need several hundred people in key positions, and some of these people would have to be in some of these people would have to be in the middle of the pyramid. They can't all be at the top. You need people in the middle of the pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid, all working in coordination to pull off that kind of a conspiracy. I mean, it's very, very difficult to get around this, And, and the problem with this is it's really hard it's really hard to get people to agree to participate in a hoax or a conspiracy. I mean, for example, if you and I asked all our close friends, will you participate in a hoax with me? Will you collaborate in a conspiracy with me? They're all going to say, no, of course not. I'm not a bad person. I don't do stuff like that. So if you asked all your best friends or closest friends to participate in a conspiracy, that very likely they're all going to say no, right? So how does the government, or whatever, or the Matrix, get hundreds of people or maybe thousands of people to agree to participate in a conspiracy or a hoax? It doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm not trying to defend the moon landing or defend the official story. I know there's a lot of evidence that the moon landing was a hoax, and that a lot of major conspiracies like this do have a lot of evidence and anomalies behind them that makes it appear that the whole thing was a hoax or a conspiracy. But my point is that even the conspiracy hypothesis doesn't make sense and has problems. It's not just the official hypothesis. So it seems like reality might be stranger than we thought, just like you said. It could be a splitting off of dimensions. Like in one dimension, the moon landing was real. In another dimension, the moon landing was a hoax. So there are different layers or dimensions of reality, and we're each in a different layer or dimension of reality, because no one theory can explain all the data. And this is common with other major conspiracies too, like the one from 2001. I don't know if it's okay to say it to mention 9/11 or not. I think it's okay because I don't think YouTube cracks down on people who talk about 9/11 anymore. I mean, it seems like they're only cracking down if you talk about the big C, but I mean, people don't talk about 9/11 that much anymore. I mean, it might have been a hot topic in 2006 or something, or 2010, but nobody really talks about it much anymore. But the point is, for 9/11 to have been an inside job, which there's a lot of evidence for, of course, You can't have just 10 people at the top. You need several hundred people in key positions all throughout the pyramid, in the middle level of the pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid, at the top, at the upper mid-level. You need a lot of people in key positions to pull off a giant national conspiracy like that. I mean, you can't just have 10 people at the top, and they can't just be on a download frequency. Okay. Like they're just robots downloading updates from the matrix or a server to tell them what to do, subconsciously without them realizing it. They would have to know that they're orchestrating a conspiracy. Do you see the problem, Matt? I mean, you're not addressing this or keeping this in mind. So this is very difficult to explain away, So whether you believe the official government story or the conspiracy theory or conspiracy hypothesis, whatever you want to call it, there's problems. There's things that don't fit in. But maybe, like you said, maybe everyone that's in on it, whether it's hundreds of people or thousands, could be NPCs. They're just doing whatever they're told, and they have no conscience or self-awareness. Who knows? I guess you could say that, but it's it sounds very fantastic and out there, like a science fiction movie, But or it could be that, like the people you and I know, our close friends, are all good, decent, honest people, and so they would never be involved in the conspiracy. But, the people that orchestrated the moon landing hoax or 9/11 or whatever, maybe they're in very different circles. They have very different types of friends and acquaintances than we do. Maybe everyone in their circle is like a scumbag or something with no conscience and no morals, and so they're able to get them all to participate in a hoax or a conspiracy. So it could be that too, that it really depends on the circles you run into, and that our friends might be good, honest people, but the people that do these conspiracies, maybe their friends and their colleagues are all scumbags or Freemasons or people in secret societies or Satanists or whatever, or NPCs or whatever, and they're able to collaborate in a conspiracy with no conscience and no problem because they're different than us. So it could be that we're just not in their circles. We're not scumbags, and so we can't relate to them. They're so we're not in their world. We're not in their circles. So maybe they can they can collaborate and pull off a conspiracy, whereas if we asked all our friends, they would refuse. So maybe we're just not like them, like you said. They could be a different type of creature than us, You could say the same thing about the ISS too, the International Space Station. If the whole thing is a hoax, then all the crew members of the ISS you see on TV, they would have to be actors. Okay, they would have to be in on it. They can't just be on a download frequency. They would know that they are actors and pretending to be on the ISS when they're not. Okay, there's no way around this, Matt. If ISS is a hoax, the crew members would have to be actors, and they would have to know they were participating in a hoax, right? They can't just be on a download. You see what I mean? You can't get out of that unless, like you said, they're all NPCs or they're a different type of creature than us. Maybe they're robots, and so they just do whatever they're told with no conscience, no remorse. Maybe they're not even self-aware. Okay, and I know that sounds fantastic, but, if reality is not real, then anything is on the table at this point, because there's no other way to explain it, because any theory you have is going to have problems. Okay, so it's difficult to explain this away, Of course, you could also say that reality is stranger than we think, and it's not linear or logical or consistent. And maybe this is, stuff like 9/11 or the moon landing or whatever. It represents a divergent point where reality splits into different layers or different dimensions, so that in one layer, the official story is true, and in another layer, the conspiracy theory is true. And, because how can the evidence point in different directions and like that? I mean, and this goes for a lot of famous events too, like murder mysteries or unsolved cases, it could work like that too, because, if you look at, famous unsolved murder cases, like, a good one is like the Amanda Knox case in Italy, that American girl that was accused of killing her British roommate. If you look at that case, there's good evidence that she's guilty, but there's good evidence that she's innocent too. So how can that be? It's not logical, because evidence should stack one way. It should not stack in different directions. In the real world, the evidence should stack one way. For example, if I hired a detective to find out if you were home last night or not, the evidence should stack one way. Either you were home or you were not home. Okay, it should not point in two different directions, In the real world, that's what it should be. The evidence should either be true or false, and should point only one way. Okay, but in a lot of these famous unsolved mystery cases, it's like the evidence points in two different ways, or 3 or 4 or 5 different directions, and that cannot be in the real world. So it's like, even in famous murder mysteries that are unsolved, it could be a divergent of reality splitting into different dimensions or layers. It might be that the person is innocent in one dimension and guilty in another, Like if you study that famous case of Jack the Ripper, the evidence is very, very confusing. I mean, it points to like 10 different directions and 10 different suspects, and how can that be in the real world, So the smartest people in the world can't solve cases like that, because the evidence does not stack up. It points to 10 different directions, So it could be that these famous unsolved murder cases are like that too. Just like conspiracies, they point in many different directions, and so reality cannot be as real as we think it is, or it cannot be consistent and logical. It must split into different divergent points. And if you, also if you look at, some cases are a real brain twister, like that modern case of the missing child called the Madeleine McCann case. If you study the Madeleine McCann case, of that Irish couple or Scottish couple that, had a missing child when they went to Spain or Portugal or something, and the case became famous and went viral. That case is a real brain twister too, because if you look at it, the evidence points to 10 different directions with 10 different suspects. And in the real world, that cannot be. I mean, it should only point in 1 or 2 directions. I mean, two directions at most. You can't have evidence pointing 10 different ways. I mean, it's like reality is a mind fuck or something. It's like it's split into different layers, or the Matrix is just trying to confuse you and put you down in the bog, like you say, Matt. Keep you down in the bog or something. Because in a real world, evidence and data should not point 10 different directions and be impossible to solve like that. The smartest detectives in the world cannot solve a case like that, because everything points in 10 different directions. So, It's like a mind fuck. And so maybe these unsolved cases are like these big conspiracies where they can never be solved, and they always put you in the bog because they're meant to be a distraction. And they show that maybe reality is not as real as you think it is. And I know to other people out there that sounds crazy and sounds weird and like science fiction, but there are so many unsolved cases and conspiracies that, that you can't leave this off the table, there, like you said, Matt, there's 58 synchronicities between Kennedy and Lincoln, and that's impossible in the real world because each one of those 58 synchronicities is highly unlikely. So in the real world, it's not possible to have that many synchronicities. I mean, it must be a gazillion to one, pretty much impossible to have 58 highly specific synchronicities like that. So maybe reality is not as real as we thought. And of course, quantum physicists say that matter is like 99.99% empty. So, this entire matrix could be a dream or an illusion of some sort, or a program, like you say. And if that's so, that's why reality becomes very malleable and very multidimensional and not as fixed and consistent as we thought. So I'm in partial agreement with you, Matt. I mean, I agree with much of what you say about the nature of reality because there's no other way to explain some of these things. But I'm just letting you know that your theory about the download frequency that everyone's on can't explain everything because, like I said, if the moon landing is a hoax, a lot of people would have to be in on it. Not only in NASA, but the 17 astronauts would have to know that they were lying and part of a hoax, logically speaking. Of course, there's other possibilities. Maybe they're not real, or maybe they're NPCs and have no conscience and will do whatever they're told. I don't know. I'm not them. I can't speak for them. Or maybe our reality is in a different dimension than theirs. I don't know. Maybe the normies are in a different world or a different zone than we are. Same with the ISS. If the ISS is a hoax, the people that are pretending to be on the ISS, the crew members, can't just be on a download. They would have to be actors who know that they're participating in a hoax, right? I mean, how do you explain that? I mean, maybe you can address that in one of your videos because, like I said, your theory can't explain everything, And this goes for everybody, including myself, okay? There's no one theory that can explain everything because every theory is going to have a problem, whether you believe the official theory or the conspiracy theory. Both have problems. Both have evidence that doesn't fit in. There's no one theory that explains everything, okay? Even if you believe 9/11 was an inside job, the people that believe that, okay, they can't explain everything. They can't explain how exactly it was carried out, 9/11. They can't explain all the anomalies. They can't explain every detail of how it was carried out. There's evidence that does not fit into the inside job hypothesis. But of course, that doesn't mean the official the official theory is true too, because the official government theory also has hundreds of problems and anomalies and impossibilities as well, as we all know. So whether you believe the official theory or the inside job theory on 9/11, I mean, you both are problematic. There's stuff that doesn't fit into either one. So, all this indicates that, like you said, Matt, reality may be stranger than we think, and maybe it's not. It's more malleable than you think, and maybe it's not as consistent as you think, and maybe things are just there to mindfuck you, and that's what it seems like, I think you would agree with me on that for the most part, but I'm just saying, Matt, that your human download frequency theory doesn't explain all the things I mentioned above, and how do you reconcile that? I mean, what do you do with that, Matt? I mean, can you address this, because, it's a major problem that should be addressed. Yeah, anyways, I think I've made my point. I hope you and your fans, Matt, hear this and maybe we can address it sometime or whatever. Um, and if not, either way, hope you all have a good day and talk to you later. Okay, signing out.